Almost 2 years ago, Adidas launched the Copa 19 Plus, a football boot that I made some unfortunate visual comparisons to, but also one that I argued was the best laceless football boot ever made. And like I said, nearly 2 years later, it looks like we are going to get the next generation of this base design, likely to be the Copa 21 Plus, but who knows what they'll end up calling it. We've got a few images of Dybala training in what looks to be a pretty close to finish variation of the next gen Copa. So just like I did with the Mercurials as well as the next gen Puma Future, I figured we'd do a little bit of speculating, break down all the different elements that we can make out from these pictures and try to get a better idea of what's next from the laceless concept of the Adidas Copa. If you guys do end up enjoying this video and want to see more boot spotting content on the channel, don't forget to support this one with a like. And if you are new here watching for the first time and don't want to miss out on weekly content on everything football boots, make sure you hit that subscribe button. So first things first, let's talk about the look, because that was arguably the most controversial aspect of the Copa 19 and 20 Plus, where I think Adidas tried to go for something very simple, but at the same time, it's so simple that it's controversial in that there aren't any Adidas stripes on the lateral side, and in most of the colorways, especially the mostly black or mostly white ones, all you really see is the silhouette of the boot and then the waves or grooves running through the leather. Other than that, there's not a lot going on from the side profile. And then of course on the medial side, that's where you'll find the usual Adidas stripes, which a lot of people did not like that look. It's something that initially I wasn't a huge fan of, but over time, it's actually grown on me. And while these are blackout prototypes that we see Dybala training in, it's not unusual for brands to still put their branding or logos on the boots, just kind of black on black, where you can very subtly see it. So I'm led to believe, based on not seeing anything on the lateral side of the upper, that they're going to stick with a very similar design language in terms of not having any visible Adidas branding along the lateral side of the boot, probably sticking with putting it on the medial side, but we'll see what happens with that. Nonetheless, it still has a very similar design language in terms of having this wavy design, where, if you guys follow me on Instagram, you might have seen that I compared it to a pair of Nike Foamposite basketball shoes. A lot of you guys also commented that they look like Nike Flightposites, which is maybe a little bit of a better comparison in terms of the pattern that's there, but nonetheless, this is a very futuristic, very sculpted design to the upper that isn't unlike what we have on the Copa 19 Plus and 20 Plus, but definitely taken to, I guess, the next extreme. And as always, I'd be really curious to hear your opinions on the way that these look down below in the comment section. But as far as my own opinion is concerned, while I can't say that I'm absolutely in love with the look, it intrigues me, which is kind of what I think Adidas was going for here and what they definitely seem to be doing when it comes to these laceless plus models. Because if you look at what they've done recently, the Predator 20 Plus, it's a football boot with spikes all over it. Very bold design. That worked out for them. People seem to like it. The Adidas X Ghosted Plus, it's basically translucent. That, again, has gone over very well. But then if you look at the opposite end of the spectrum, the Nemesis 19 Plus, which has not been very popular, it too has a bold design, but that one did not catch on. I think most people, at least I think, it's not a very good looking football boot, and I feel like this Copa could go in either direction. Obviously the colorways that they go for and any patterns that they might include on the boot with this wavy design is gonna have a huge influence on what people think about it. But if they go with just solid colors and kind of just let the sculpture do the talking, I think that this has some really good potential, more so than the Copa 19 and 20 Plus, which I think a lot of people just kind of viewed as weird looking. This will still have that weird looking, I think, vibe about it, but at the same time, I think it has the potential to be more popular and hopefully compete a little bit better with something like the Nike Tiempo, which I think is by far the most popular modern leather football boot that's currently available. Now, as for the technical side of things, while we don't have any specific information, there are a few details that I think we can assume based on these images. And I think the tricky aspect of the Copa 19 Plus and 20 Plus is that a lot of people were skeptical as to whether or not you could take a soft leather material for an upper and turn it into a laceless football boot, because it would lack structure, it would lack lockdown, it just doesn't seem like it would work well. But Adidas proved everybody wrong with their fusion skin material, which combines that super soft, really thin kangaroo leather, this being some of the softest leather you can get on any football boot, period, with a knitted material. Their prime knit technology that you have fully exposed across the top of the foot as well as around the ankle area, and then with some fused material mainly around the attachment point, not only for the sake of structure, but also to just strengthen the bond between these two materials. And it's not quite as fancy as Adidas would lead you to believe, because if you look really closely, you can actually see the crisscross stitching where the two materials come together. Nonetheless, this is a concept that works extremely well and proved to be one of the best laceless football boot designs we've ever seen. The question is, how do they improve upon this design? And based on these images of what we can assume is the next generation laceless Copa, they've taken the craziness dial and cranked it to 10, because you can clearly still see that at the toe area, at the very least, the boot is made from leather. It appears to have a little bit of a smoother texture versus what we have now on the Copa 20 Plus, but it still looks very thin, and I'm going to assume that if it's the same type of leather, it's also going to be very soft. I'm a little bit concerned as to how much leather is actually there, because despite this entire red area looking leather, it actually doesn't extend as high up the foot as a lot of people think it does. And again, unless you've actually worn a pair yourself, it's difficult to explain, but I'm assuming the amount of leather you're going to get on this new version is probably going to be pretty similar to the Copa 20 Plus, which is a good or a bad thing depending on how you want to look at it. But of course, it's the wavy design that you have running through the midfoot as well as the ankle area that is the biggest point of contention, because we don't exactly know what's going on there. There's two possibilities in my mind. It is either a variation of what we have now, where it's just a prime knit material, where they have kind of fused a top layer of polyurethane or plastic to give it these deep kind of wavy grooves. We kind of see a similar design element here on the Copa in this area that isn't actually made of leather. This is just knit with some waviness grooved in. But it's also entirely possible that this wavy material is something entirely different, and they've only used the elasticated prime knit in the laceless area as well as around the ankle, where you can see there is some of that exposed knit material. What's even more interesting though is what's happening directly across the top of the foot, where the more that I look at these boots, the more it reminded me of one in particular, and that is this guy right here, the Lotto Zero Gravity Ultra, where if you look at this boot, it's obviously entirely made out of a synthetic material. That synthetic flows from the toe across the top of the foot. Then you have what is basically just a slightly stretchy rubber running along either side. If you look at these images, you can see that there appears to be a very similar type of design, but instead of having the rubber on either side of this material flowing up the middle, you appear to have some kind of an elasticated knit. I'm not sure if there's any extra reinforcement or any added structure to this laceless system internally, similar to what we see on the Nemesis 19 Plus as an example. That, of course, we won't know until we get some official information from the Adi brand, but it appears that the laceless system has been completely redesigned along with the rest of the boot, which always calls into question how effective the fit and lockdown is going to be. But assuming that they've redesigned everything, I think the goal is always to improve things. So I'm pretty excited to see how this is going to fit and feel in comparison to the current Copa, which I think they actually did a pretty good job with. Which brings us to a part of these boots that we can't see very well, and that is the sole plate and stud pattern. And sticking with the rear portion of the upper, you can see what looks to be kind of an outline for a rounded external heel counter, but based on these images, it's really unclear as to whether or not that heel counter is actually there, or it's just a design that's part of the upper. I'm led to believe that there isn't an external heel counter, but I guess that remains to be seen. But the sole plate, you can definitely tell, has been completely redesigned. As of right now, as of me making this video, we don't have any clear shots of it, but you can pretty clearly see along the side that it has this very wavy design kind of flowing up the side of the upper, which is totally different from the current Copa, which has a very lackluster exo frame design, where the sole plate is bulkier and heavier and stiffer than it needs to be, and the stud pattern is about as uninspired as it could possibly be. So pretty much anything that differs from this design, I think, is going to be an improvement, but I'm hoping from this new sole plate that we kind of inch towards the speed frame design that we've seen in the X series on this new Copa because there really isn't any reason to make the boot unnecessarily heavy for a slightly thicker sole plate. I just don't think that's what people are looking for anymore. So hopefully that's the direction that they go into. And again, while we haven't seen the stud pattern as of yet, I'm going to assume that they're going to maintain a very similar stud pattern layout as we've seen from the Adidas brand basically for the last decade. But like we just saw with the new X Ghosted series, it looks like Adidas is a little bit more willing to play around with the shape of the studs rather than the positioning. So hopefully we'll get something more aggressive than what we have on the current Copa. And if that's the case, I think there's a lot to look forward to. And then the final question we need to answer is the release date. When will you actually be able to buy this next generation Copa? And it's really tricky to say, especially given that this is the first time we're seeing any player actually wear these in a training session just a week ago. So I'm led to believe that we're still a couple months out from an official release. December, I think, is very likely, but at the same time, it'll be exactly 2 years in like the second week of November from when the Copa 19 Plus launched. So early November is also a strong possibility. Either way, I think within 2020 is when we're gonna see this release. I don't see them pushing it into January, but at the same time, because of the whole COVID situation, this has kind of really screwed up their timelines. And it seems to me, especially as of late, all of the big brands, Nike, Adidas, and Puma, they seem to time their releases based on what other brands are doing to try and steal some of their thunder. So should Puma or Nike decide to put out something really cool that people are excited about, within a couple days, maybe even on the same day, we might see this brand new Copa again to steal away some of that hype from another brand. So 2020, I think, is very likely, but who knows at this point. Anyways, guys, that's it for this one. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to support it with a like. Feel free to share your own opinions on this boot down below in the comment section. And if you have any questions regarding anything that I talked about in this video, feel free to leave that down below as well, and I'll do my best to get an answer out to you as soon as I possibly can. If you're not subscribed to the channel already, make sure you hit that subscribe button along with the little bell notification so you get notified when the next new video goes live. You can find all my social media information linked down below in the description as well. And other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.